The Northwood High School 20-year reunion was a temple of forced nostalgia and thinly veiled desperation. The gymnasium, once a place of adolescent agony, was now strung with fairy lights that couldn't hide the smell of old basketballs and anxiety. I stood by the punch bowl, a ghost at my own funeral. And then, they arrived. The triumvirate. Mark Henderson, the former quarterback, his jawline now softened by expensive steaks and single-malt scotch. Chloe Peterson, the head cheerleader, her smile still a weapon, though it now took more effort to wield. And Jason Miller, Mark's wingman, whose cruel wit had evolved into a used car salesman's smarm. They moved through the crowd like royalty holding court, their laughter a little too loud, their hugs a little too calculated. They were the kings and queen of a kingdom that had ceased to exist 2 decades ago, but nobody had told them. I felt 17 again. The pit in my stomach was the same one I got every time I walked through these doors. Mark tapped a microphone on the small stage. Hey, Northwood. Can I have your attention? The crowd hushed, turning to their former hero. Man, look at us. All grown up. CEOs, doctors, amazing parents. He paused, his eyes twinkling with a familiar, malicious glee. But let's be honest, we all peaked in high school, right? The crowd laughed, a nervous, agreeing chuckle. And we couldn't have done it without the people who made us look so good, he continued, his gaze sweeping the room and landing squarely on me. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. No, I'm serious. Like Sarah. Sarah Jennings. Come on up here, Sarah. The spotlight of 100 pairs of eyes found me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to dissolve into the floor. I forced my feet to carry me forward, the journey to the stage feeling like a mile. Mark slung an arm around me, his grip too tight. This is Sarah. Man, we gave you a hard time, didn't we? The quiet, mousy girl in the library. He laughed, and the crowd laughed with him. Remember we started that rumor she was raising feral cats in her locker? Chloe giggled from the front row. And the time we put her backpack in the girls' shower? They were reminiscing about my torture. Publicly. Celebrating it. But look at you now, Sarah, Mark said, his tone patronizing. You cleaned up nice. I heard you're a writer or something. That's cute. Really. It's great that everyone finds their level. He had reduced 2 decades of my life, my pain, and my work to cute. He was framing my entire existence as a minor, pathetic prelude to his glorious adulthood. I stood there, under the hot lights, smelling his cologne and feeling the weight of every mocking memory. But this time, something was different. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, solid certainty. I looked at Mark, then at Chloe and Jason. And I smiled. It wasn't a nervous twitch. It was a calm, knowing, and deeply unsettling smile. My name is Sarah Jennings. I'm 38 years old. For 20 years, I carried the scars Northwood High gave me. I was the girl with the feral cats, the one whose clothes were thrift store chic, in the worst way, the one no one would partner with in chemistry. I spent years in therapy, rebuilding a self-esteem they had systematically shattered. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, then through an MFA, writing late into the night, fueled by equal parts ambition and a quiet, simmering fury. They left me with nothing but a story. So I decided to write it. The bullying wasn't just occasional teasing. It was a sustained, 4-year campaign of psychological warfare. It started in freshman biology when I corrected Mark's answer about mitochondria. His pride couldn't handle it. The rumors were their weapon of choice. They didn't just call me names, they built a narrative. That I smelled. That my family was in a cult. That I was obsessed with them, writing their names in my notebooks. They stole my homework, poured soda on my seat, and accidentally bumped into me in the halls, sending my books flying. The worst was the Confessions of a Stalker blog they created in our senior year. Jason, the tech-savvy one, wrote fake, creepy diary entries from my perspective, detailing my obsession with Mark and Chloe. They shared it with the entire school. For months, I was met with stares of fear and disgust. Teachers looked at me with pity but did nothing. My reputation wasn't just ruined, it was monstrous. They exploited the one thing every teenager needs, a sense of belonging. They made me an outsider in my own skin. Their trust wasn't broken, it was a tool they never offered. Their power was absolute, and they wielded it with the casual cruelty of the truly entitled. For years after graduation, I tried to forget. But their voices were a tape loop in my head. Their laughter echoed in my dreams. My first few novels were quiet, literary affairs. They sold modestly. They were me. Trying to write about something else, anything else. The reunion invitation was the trigger. The moment it arrived, the tape loop in my head became a roar. I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was a writer. And writers take their pain and alchemize it into art. Or in this case, into a weapon. I didn't need to discover the truth, I had lived it. But I needed to document it. I found an old box in my parents' attic. My old diaries, filled with the raw, agonizing details of every insult, every humiliation. I found printouts of the fake blog, which I'd kept as a bizarre form of self-flagellation. My unique skill wasn't hacking or chemistry. It was empathy and observation. I had spent 4 years studying them, learning every nuance of their personalities, their fears, their insecurities that they hid behind their bravado. I knew them better than their own friends did. I spent 2 years writing The Golden Cage. It wasn't a memoir. A memoir would have been too obvious, too easy to dismiss. Instead, I wrote a roman à clef, a novel in which real people and events are presented under the guise of fiction. The protagonist was Lena, a quiet girl tormented by the Golden Trio, Chad, the arrogant athlete, Brittany, the manipulative socialite, and Kyle, the sycophantic follower. I didn't just recount the bullying. I delved into their why. I gave Chad a violently demanding father he could never please. I gave Brittany a deep, terrifying fear of being ordinary. I gave Kyle a desperate, pathetic need to belong to something, anything, that made him feel powerful. I took their deepest, most hidden insecurities and laid them bare on the page with a devastating, empathetic cruelty. I didn't paint them as monsters, I painted them as flawed, broken people who chose to break others, and that made it all the more damning. The stake was my own closure. And their perfect, curated reputations. The night of the reunion, after Mark's little speech, I didn't go home and cry. I went home, opened my laptop, and emailed my editor. The final manuscript for The Golden Cage was attached. The subject line was, "It's ready. Unleash it." The envelope was in the mail. There was no stopping it. 6 months later, The Golden Cage was number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. It was a sensation. The buzz wasn't just about the writing, it was about the real people behind the characters. Online sleuths had a field day. It took less than a week for someone to connect Northwood High to my real high school, and then the names started to surface. My phone rang. It was Mark. His voice was a low, shaking growl. "Sarah. What in the hell have you done?" We met at a quiet, upscale coffee bar. He was already there, looking haggard. The confident quarterback was gone. Chloe and Jason were with him, their faces pale and tight with fury. "You wrote a book about us," Chloe hissed, the moment I sat down. "You painted me as a shallow, manipulative bee." As a deeply insecure woman terrified of her own fading relevance, I corrected calmly. "There's a difference." Anger. Mark slammed his hand on the table, making the cups rattle. "That is defamation. That is libel." I'll sue you for every penny you have. I'll own your house, your royalties, everything. You're welcome to try, I said, taking a sip of my tea. My publisher's legal team is excellent. And as they explained to me, for it to be libel, it has to be untrue. Is any of it untrue, Mark? Did your father not call you a disappointment after you lost the state championship? Did you not cry in the locker room? He recoiled as if slapped. His secret shame, exposed. Manipulation. Chloe's voice switched to a wounded, trembling plea. Sarah, we were kids. We didn't know what we were doing. This is going to ruin my husband's political campaign. My children are being teased at school. This is our adult lives you're destroying. I looked at her, my gaze steady. You didn't care about destroying my life when I was a kid. Why should I care about yours now? You made my life a living hell for 4 years. I've just given you a taste of what that feels like, with a global audience. Begging. Jason, always the follower, looked utterly lost. Please, Sarah. Just put out a statement. Say it's all coincidence. Say we're not them. I'll apologize. We all will. Publicly. Just make it stop. I looked at the three of them, these broken, middle-aged versions of my teenage tormentors. The power dynamic had completely, irrevocably flipped. It's too late, I said, my voice soft but final. The book is out. People have read it. They know. Your friends know. Your colleagues know. Your children will read it one day. You're not characters in a book anymore. You're a public spectacle. The whole world now sees the cruel, pathetic people you always were underneath the Letterman jackets and the cheerleading skirts. I didn't ruin your lives. I just wrote the truth. You ruined them yourselves. 20 years ago. The realization dawned on their faces, a slow, terrifying sunrise of doom. This wasn't a legal problem. It was a social and personal annihilation. There was no lawsuit, no apology, that could put this genie back in the bottle. The fallout was public and brutal. Mark's wife, who had no idea about his past, was reportedly devastated and staying with her parents. Chloe's husband, a rising star city councilman, dropped out of his mayoral race, citing personal reasons. Their country club membership was not renewed. My parents, who had watched me suffer for years, were initially worried, but then fiercely proud. They had it coming, honey, my father said, a grim set to his jaw. No one gets to treat my daughter that way. I did an interview with a major magazine. The interviewer asked me the inevitable question, why now? Why dredge up such painful history? I looked directly into the camera. I didn't dredge it up. I carried it with me every day for 20 years. I stayed silent for 2 decades, not because I was weak, but because I was gathering my strength. I wrote this book for the 17-year-old me, and for every other person who has ever been made to feel small. To show them that the pen, in the end, is mightier than the punch. Their golden worlds crumbled into dust. Mark was asked to resign from his cushy VP job after the board saw the parallels in the book. Chloe's picture-perfect Instagram life, a curated gallery of brunches and beach vacations, became a ghost town, flooded with comments from readers of the book. Jason's car dealership saw a mysterious downturn in business, with negative reviews all mentioning Kyle's slimy character. Their own weapon, social reputation, became the instrument of their downfall. They had built their adult lives on the myth of their high school glory, and my book exposed that myth as a hollow, cruel fraud. The very thing they valued most was now permanently, publicly tarnished. They say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. Living well is a good start. But telling the true, brutal, and beautifully crafted story of why you had to fight so hard to live well? That is the sweetest revenge of all.